Okay.
So,
Okay, so good morning. Welcome to Module 5, War, Terrorism, and Justice, where
Ooh.
we'll talk about Chapter 7 and the mentor text, Refugees. I think we should talk about the mentor text first.
I think that's a
Okay.
good idea. Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Wow. Yo, I can honestly say that this is one of the few books where I talked out loud a lot.
Yeah,
I found myself, just when I was reading, I was like, no, Isabel, don't. And Yusuf, you've got to, or Yosef, you cannot do that. I don't usually do that with books. I'll say it in my head. But
Yeah.
this was one of the few books that I just wanted to I don't know. It just felt like when I was reading it, like I was almost right there with them.
right.
Mm-hmm.
I agree that I also had a lot of out loud reactions. I mean, several times I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just getting so frustrated. I mean,
Yes.
it's like anytime they gave them just a little small hint of hope, they
It
snatched it
totally,
back.
yes.
Like,
Yes.
it
Um,
was frustrating.
I took this book to the pool. When I took a couple of days a week. I try to take my kids to the pool for at least a couple hours for them to do something. And so a lot of times I'll take my book so that I can read while we're there. I
Yeah.
had a mom stop me. And she asked if I was in the middle school or had a middle schooler or anything. And she actually is a teacher, but she has a seventh grader, and he had two friends with him, and they both said that book. Oh gosh, I had nightmares over that book. And I said,
Wow.
Uh,
really? And she sat there and had probably a 30-minute conversation with me about what a hard year and just hard time that her son and his friends had, or basically the whole class had with this book. They were like journaling and doing all kinds of activities with it, but she said that he had nightmares over it. And it was just that, and I don't know if it was the teacher's perspective of how it was handled in class, or if it was the content. I couldn't really get a clear answer from her, but I was just kind of taken aback and a little shocked. I mean, I guess just wow.
right.
Yeah. Did they do like a year-long thing with it, or was it just maybe an extended
I don't know.
version?
She just, and I don't know how long they did it. But she said it was just really heavy, and I agree, it was really
Oh, it's
heavy.
very
But
heavy.
all of our
Yeah.
reading has been really, really
Yeah.
heavy.
It's been on the heavier side, I guess.
Ooh, like, and y'all were talking about talking out loud. I mean, I found myself gasping so much, just like,
Mhm.
Yes.
oh, and crying hysterically
Yeah,
out in public when I'm reading.
Yeah.
I was literally gonna ask, like, how many times did y'all cry?
I
I
stopped
stopped
counting at like
counting.
15.
Yeah, I had to
Okay.
stop counting because I did. I just found myself tearing up a lot. And then finally I was okay, well, there's number 12, or, you know,
Right.
every other, chapter, I guess. And then finally I was like, no need in keeping count. This book is just a heavy, heavy. One story alone, I think, would have been heavy, but the three
Yeah.
itself and how they were, I loved the setup
Why?
because I felt like we did get to know a lot about them.
Yeah.
And just the first part of the book.
And
But
to
that just
think
made
that
it so much harder as we went on because I felt like I knew those little kids.
And to
Yeah.
think that they are so far apart as far as time,
Right?
but yet
Yes,
they are so similar.
they're right
Right.
there together, but they're
Yes,
in no
they
way
deal with,
connected.
like, our world has come so far, yet it really
It,
hasn't. I mean,
yes,
you
Yeah.
had somebody from Nazi Germany to the 90s, and then, what was the Mohammed? How did y'all say his name?
I
I said
said
Muhammad.
Muhammad for a while, and then I started saying Mohammed or Momed, but I
Uh-huh.
said Muhammad for like most of the book because
That's what I
that's
kept saying to myself too. But what, that was 2015. So I mean, but they were so far apart time wise, and but yet, gosh, they had so many things that connected them, and that they
yes,
shared similar experiences.
I think the irony of it all is that like we can even have a 2023 version of this story. I know like last week there was 750 people that um they there was a boat on the Mediterranean.
yes,
Yeah, and their
yes,
boat sank, crashed, whatever, and a lot of those people died. trying to cross to get to safety.
Trying to go somewhere where they could be
Yeah,
safe. Yeah.
refugees. And I'm just like, wow, first of all, the timing of us reading it when like I mean, I guess there's always so much going on, but like the way that we're able to connect it to even present day, I'm just like,
Yes.
Well, and also, I guess I kept thinking too, the timing of this book as we're leading into into the fourth holiday for Independence Day.
right.
And oh, I mean, the timing and the placement of it just kind of, I don't know if that was intentional, which I mean, I don't really
Probably
think it
was.
could have been. I mean, because of this an 8-week course, but it's freedom and war and justice and oh yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. I think
Um,
one of the first times that I really teared up was when they were talking to talking about Yosef's dad,
yeah.
and that just that poor man, he made it back to them from the camp, but
Oh,
at that time he was just so far gone, and so much had happened to him. And when they were on the boat, he wouldn't leave the cabin, kept
Mhm.
thinking that somebody was always after them, and they were. He was right.
Right.
But it was
Um,
just so heartbreaking to kind of see that poor man, or not see, kind of read about that poor man trying to help his family and not stopping at anything.
I think even with the family, like, I wrote down from page 115, Yosef, he wondered what happened to him. Is it Dashaw? I don't know how to pronounce the place.
Oh,
The
Daco?
is it Daco?
Yeah,
Okay. At Daco, that he's now a ghost of the man that he once was.
yeah, yeah.
mm,
I mean, just thinking about the family's perspective of seeing how their dad
Mm.
is, but then I mean, I couldn't even imagine like if we would have gotten the dad's perspective. And I mean, there were glimpses when he kind of would say, I wrote down from page 131, the things that happened at roll call, the hangings, the floggings, the drownings, the beatings. He wrapped his arms around himself, and Yosef knew his father was talking about that place. Once I saw another man shot dead, um, his father whispered. He was standing right beside me. I couldn't move, couldn't make a sound, or I would be next. And then I also wrote about his wife saying, "Be strong, my love. Be strong like you were before." And he said, "But I wasn't. I wasn't strong. I was just lucky. It could have been me.
Oh,
It should
yes,
have been me."
yes. When he talked
So
about him being lucky,
even the survivor's guilt that he must have felt.
survivor's guilt. Yeah, yeah. When I do the
Like,
Holocaust with my 10th grade, I talk a lot about that because that is a real thing.
yeah.
And it's something that if you are still, living and you were in that time, that they do have to contend with that. And a lot of them say, it could have been me. It almost was me several times,
right.
picked out of the line, or when they would, bust in on them at night. He was like, I don't know why I lived. There's no reason why I should have lived, but I did. So, now they have to deal with that. And when the dad was talking about how they hung that guy up like a fish and drowned
Yeah,
Oh,
him in the barrel, that was,
intense.
yeah, that was just intense. And the thing is, in this book, it's really short, but it's just like with Long Way Down, they're short sentences or short parts, but that really just it stuck with me for a long time.
yeah,
The beginning of the book when it first opened to Joseph and his family and the brown shirts coming in to their apartment and
right.
just wreaking havoc on everything. I kind of had to read a few pages and step away and take a break for a minute because it was just so intense. Like
Yes.
I was just kind of a little taken aback for a minute just because the intensity of when it first started just was a lot, was really heavy. And I kept thinking about these poor people and these poor children that
Yeah,
we
Yep.
children.
get, their children. And then thinking about, have y'all ever looked into TBRI, is the trauma response in the brain and
Mhm.
how
Oh
it
yeah.
forever changes your, I mean, it changes your brain chemistry and it changes the structure of your brain. They have all this imaging to support it. And it's just it's pretty not impressive in that impressive that you have this research to document and show what all trauma can do. And I just couldn't stop thinking about that throughout this whole book, because trauma, it does, and we all knew this and know this, that it forever changes you. And
Right.
sometimes it's not for the good, like his dad. I mean,
Right.
it changes your brain chemistry, and your brain, and that change just changes the structure of your brain.
And then Mohammed's little brother Waleed, like
Oh,
that was another moment where I was
Oh,
like,
yeah. Did y'all look up the picture of the person that they described at the end?
I couldn't last night, but I kept thinking that I wanted to, because I don't know about y'all, but I loved that they put the actual connection in the
I
back.
Yes.
did too. I
I
love
Then
the
mean,
map.
again,
I'm
but
like,
then again,
wow.
it really made it hit home a little bit harder, and it was, ooh,
Yeah. I don't know if you want to see it. I have it pulled up.
oh, I don't care. It's okay. Yeah.
About the boy on the ambulance. I'd seen that picture.
No, my computer is probably not gonna show it.
It's
Okay,
probably
well,
not
if you look
gonna show
it
up.
up,
I'll look it up.
yeah, I mean, it's like, wow. Um, I was gonna say that kind of went along with what you all just said. This text took me the longest to read. And part of that was because, I mean, it was so much trauma dumping that, like,
Mhm.
I just had to take several steps away. Like,
Mhm. Well, I feel like this is kind of just tying it all in. All of our reading has been life changing from a reader's perspective, in my
yeah,
opinion. Um, just that, I mean, I've always loved books, but not to the extent that I really feel like I have grown to love them in the past few months. Does that make sense?
yeah,
I look and then I reflect and think, I'm an adult. I'm an old person, and I am just like, I don't know. I feel like this class has built such a new love for so many things, but then again, that this was so heavy, that this summer's reading has been so heavy that it it's just been a lot.
yeah.
Exactly. It's just been a lot.
It's
I
just
mean,
Yeah,
been,
I am at
it
a
did.
loss for words. I'm sorry.
No, it took me, this was probably the because I had to keep taking a break.
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
It's the chapters were short,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I had to like I could read
It's
one or
like,
two and then I had to like walk away and you
Mhm.
because
know,
each person's story will be like 3 pages. And then in those 3 pages, so much happened every
there's so much.
time.
It's like you said, Lauren, like they would get a glimmer or just a small portion of hope and then 10 steps back.
It's like I had to think about it and process it and then connect it back. And then there were
Yeah.
little things like when Isabel's grandpa,
Oh my
Lito,
gosh,
that
yes.
made the comment when they were naming their boat about the
Yeah.
St.
And I was
Louis. And
like,
I thought,
wait,
oh,
why did he
whoa,
say that?
whoa. Because I was like, oh, wait a minute. And I was like, well, I'm sure everybody knew because he's been in
Right.
jail forever. But then I was not expecting the way that ended.
Yeah,
As far as he's referencing the St. Louis, but there were so many little things that you had to stop and think about. Okay, so her grandpa is mentioned that he wanted to name their boat the St. Louis. Wait a minute.
I had to go back. I'm like, wait, am I mixing up stories? Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I did the
yeah.
same thing.
I had to check the dates and look back at the
yeah,
chapter dates and like, oh, are we about to cross over? Is there going to be a
right?
connection here?
It kind of reminded me on the midterm when she asked like how many aha or like whoa moments have you had?
Yes.
I'm like, now that I was like, oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
And then his guilt, you know?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
like I so hated because he was right there.
Hmm.
I mean, he got to
Exactly.
watch everybody else go, but
And then in Isabel's story, when Ivan, when that happens with
oh,
Ivan,
Oh God.
it was
oh,
so abrupt. I was like, whoa, 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 wait. And then
Uh-huh.
in her when her story picks back up, that's when you feel like I thought that was a really good technique because when you were saying earlier about the
yeah,
dumping, they could have the author could have just put it
kept
at
it.
that point, but it was later
It was like
when her
right
story,
before it got to be too much,
yeah,
it
right
would stop,
before, right
and then
before,
you'll go back into I
and then
wow.
when she really grieves over him because I was Honestly, I was thinking it would have been the grandfather or the mom who was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I thought
Yeah.
something was going to happen there, but then when it was Ivan, I was like, oh my gosh,
I
like,
think my frustration when I was reading it, when they came up with the idea to get on the two people out the boat, I'm like, are they not thinking about sharks? And then when
I,
it happened, I'm like, I tried to tell you, like, what are
exactly,
you doing?
exactly. Yeah.
Why would you
That
do
just for
that?
me, that reinforced it that like they had a tiny little now I know 90 miles may not seem a lot when you're driving, but God, when you're out on the open ocean, 90
Oh,
miles would be like 90,000 miles, but they're willing to risk starvation, sharks, the boat
Mhm.
tearing apart when the tanker, excuse me, when the tanker ship, they saw it in the night. I was like, oh, how would you get out of the way of something like that?
Right.
You know?
well, and then Isabel jumped in to save Senor
Yes.
Yes.
Castillo. I
Yes.
mean,
And then we hear about the glimpse of, what happened with her grandmother. So I like that we get a lot of
oh,
why, like why they did the things they did.
I like that too, because it would be so easy for me to get lost and why would they do? But it does.
Yeah.
It tells you that
It
this
explains
is why
everything.
it does. It explains everything. And it does it not in a like over explanation, like, okay, we get it,
uh-huh.
5 chapters of your no, it's just a, again, a brief explanation of, her grandmother was swept away in a hurricane.
Right.
That's
Another thing, because Isabel's story was like 1993, and so they didn't have the technology. Um, so they're just on this boat steering with pretty much no direction, and
Mhm.
that's how they ended up in the Bahamas, and that sucked too because even like with Ivan dying, he was so close. They got to Miami like,
they were so
Were
close.
so close.
and
So
he had
close.
such a future ahead of him with the baseball.
Yeah.
Like,
And then just gets ended.
and then the hope that they got when they got to the Bahamas and then the people actually helped them, like when they gave them the water and the
Yes.
goods and the aspirin. I'm like, okay, like again, one of those moments where I'm like, yes, like some hope, like maybe this is gonna be a
Yes.
happy ending.
Yes. I was thinking too when they reached there and that woman gave her the bottle of aspirin. I was thinking, how many times have I had like a headache or just, not felt well, and somebody offers me an aspirin. I'm like, no, I need Tylenol. Aspirin's not strong enough for me.
Right. Wow.
And then they were like, just a couple of aspirin to like help with her ankle or help with other things that they have been going through. I was like, oh my God, here I am spoiled.
Even when I say
I
last
had a
night,
lot of those thoughts.
yes,
Yeah.
last night before bed, I was brushing my teeth and I had the water running, which I know is not good, and so I cut the water off. But in the instance when I just had the water running, I'm like, these people are on that boat, no water. Well, they had water, but they're rationing out water,
Right.
and there's
Right.
people without water, and I'm over here running water, brushing my teeth. Like, I just had one of those,
That's
like,
so funny, Lauren, because I'll do that too. I have a bad habit of leaving it running while I'm,
hmm
brushing my teeth or just something. I'm like, oh, I'll run over
yeah.
and turn it off, or I'll quickly turn it off. And I'm just thinking, gosh, I have so much. And there's people that probably haven't had water in days, at least not clean water, not
hmm
water that's,
And that's even here in the
potable.
United States. Was it in
Uh-huh.
Michigan?
Yeah.
Flint,
Yes.
Michigan, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I
Well, and
mean,
you are talking about having moments where you felt just spoiled and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons I had to just put it down because I'm taking in, here I what am half the time part of the time when I'm reading it, or I was at the pool with my kids and I'm going, hi, yeah,
even I thought
I
about
just
the fact, like I've traveled to some of these, you travel to these places for leisure, for fun.
Yeah.
How, remember when I mentioned that I went to Israel and I saw up close and personal, the violence between Israel and Palestine. And it's like,
It's
I know
very,
in the chapter they mentioned them and they said how the war seems so far away into like you're kind of like when you're reading about it, it seems so far away, but when in
it's
reality,
right there. Yeah.
mhm.
I really felt bad for them when they were when Yosef's family were crossing over, and they're like, this is the nicest they've been. They had dinner every night and dancing on the
Yeah,
deck, and then there was that picture of Hitler and the captain, and I was like, uh-oh, this
I
just not
wrote,
gonna go well.
Mhm.
right.
And that's where his dad kept talking about that there was a catch.
There
There
was a
Yeah.
had to be
catch.
a catch
Yeah,
somewhere.
I wrote from there. There was a moment where he just said he wanted to stay on the St. Louis forever.
Yes.
And
forever.
the irony of that, because they were on there for
Yes.
so long. I mean, not to just like jump ahead or jump to the end, but I so hated that he died.
I know, but he always wanted to be an adult, and he kept telling us
Yeah,
that he was a man and he was an adult. And even when this is still jumping further ahead, when Ruthie, when
retired.
Ruthie and her husband take in Muhammad's family in the
Hmm.
end, she talks about him, and all she talks about is one of the main things that she remembers is that he always wanted to be a grown up.
Hmm. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh, but at one point too, he's made a comment. Um, he, sorry, I'm trying to find it on pages 58 and 59 when he talks about that he had the most fun that he had had. Um,
Oh yeah.
where he was dancing and having fun, and he had not laughed and had that much fun. And it was that it at his bar mitzvah.
I don't know. I just know from that page I did write down. That's where I wrote he wished they could stay on this on board this St. Louis forever.
Yes, because he'd had fun, but then that's where he was talking about that because he always wanted to be an adult and he wasn't letting himself he wouldn't let himself have any fun or
Yeah, he
I
smile
thought
or
he had to
laugh.
be grown up.
Yeah,
Yes, or
he's always
laugh.
like, "Oh, that's childish," but I did write down from there too, like, I just wrote that I'm glad that he got to experience some
Mhm.
good, some type
Yes.
of goodness, some type of fun,
Exactly.
because, I mean, he was almost, like, so anti-fun because he was trying to grow up, like
Hmm.
and, I mean, at the beginning when they first got on the boat, he did play around a little bit,
Yeah.
and,
Oh,
they
with
did
the two
pranks and
girls. Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. So I was like, I'm glad he got to experience that because
I guess in the absence of his dad, he just kind of took it that he had to try to step up and take care of everybody with everything
Mhm.
that was going
Everything that was going
on.
on.
And
Yes.
then when the mom had her breakdown, he's like, "Wow, like, I'm the adult now, like, I have to take care of
Hmm.
my sister."
Oh,
Ugh. When his dad jumped off the boat.
oh my gosh.
Oh.
That was another one. I was like, no.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I did think it was really touching though on the way over when the older man died and all the
Yeah.
Jews on the boat got together.
Yeah.
And no matter what, in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of, I'm sure a lot of them were thinking this can't be this good. Something is happening,
Right.
trying to figure it out, but they still, they tried to bury him as best they could in the Jewish tradition. They all said some prayers,
Mhm.
and it's like, even in the midst of the most horrible thing, even when they were in Syria, Mohammed or Muhammad, whatever his name is, just saying they stopped to say the prayers and
Their
they
faith.
stopped.
Yes.
Exactly. I was like, that was really just I don't know, just a really memorable moment in the book for me when they did that.
I agree. I mean, their faith truly was unwavering throughout the story.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, that's what got them through.
it is.
That was their saving grace, basically.
Let's talk a little bit about Muhammad's dad. Honestly, I feel like he was one of my favorite characters in the book because throughout all these traumatic situations, I mean, he just tried to remain hopeful. He kept going, he persevered, and he tried to always make people laugh. His jokes were
It,
corny
they
and
were they
probably
were they were
at
corny,
the
but
time, and they were
you know,
annoying, but
Yeah.
it was like I just appreciated his effort. Like,
oh, he was tireless. He really was. When because if it had been me, especially, I don't have a family, but I don't have kids, but if I had them, I'd be like, y'all, this might be the end. We may just have to live here. But he was like, oh no, if the boat don't come tomorrow, we're gonna go the next day and we'll find a place and we'll get like he was so focused and so, just unyielding that he was going to get his family to Germany.
On page 71, I wrote, okay, really, page 70. I wrote down so many. It's like I don't even know where to start with the quotes. I wrote so much down. Um, when they were in the car and the soldiers kind of stopped them and they're like, and they got in the car with them. They said you shouldn't be leaving Syria. You should stand up and fight for your country, fight the tyrant Assad. Um, Muhammad thought between Assad and Daesh and Russia and America, there wasn't much of Syria left to fight for. And page 71, the dad says, I just want to keep my family safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that
that's really all he wanted to do.
I wrote down on page 55 where he looked at all of them and he said, we've spent too much time talking about it and not doing anything. It's not safe here. It hasn't been for months, years.
Yeah.
We should have gone long ago. Ready or not, if we want to live, we have to leave Syria.
Yes.
And
That was,
they were so prepared. They had so much money.
Yeah,
Like,
they did. I
I
don't know
think,
how they how they got that, but he was,
yeah, and he was
well,
smart
Dad
about
had a good
rationing.
job.
Yeah, he did a great job about rationing it. Oh, yeah. Oh, you're saying
No,
his
he had
job.
a good job because he worked
Yeah.
for, was it a cell phone company?
Yeah, I think they did say
oh,
that.
that's right.
Because he
Okay.
knew about
Yes.
networks and cell phones and the connections and all that stuff.
That's right. Because they said when the bomb went off that they knew that they would, hear from him because he had,
Yeah.
that kind of technology and stuff.
Something funny I wrote that's about that page 70. They said use Apple Maps. Another soldier said, no, you idiot, Google Maps is better. And I thought that was funny because like like I hear people say that all the time, every other day. No, use Google Maps, use Apple Maps, use I'm like, I just thought that was funny. They put that in there.
When you were talking about his humor, so my mom is always one of those that to deal with horrible situations like when my grandmother had dementia and all kinds of stuff, she's one of those that she has to crack jokes and she has to laugh, and that's her way of dealing with things. And she's like,
Mhm.
but if I can't laugh about it, I will lose my mind and
Yeah.
I will not be able to hold myself together, and I have to hold myself together for everybody else.
Right.
And so I saw a lot of that in his dad, that he had to make jokes to be able to hold himself, well, until he was beaten. He was able
Yep.
to hold himself together, and then he kind of
Oh,
just shut down.
yes.
But
Yeah.
I
that was the
wrote,
only way he could hold himself together, to hold it together for everybody else. Because if he fell apart, because mom fell apart because of Hannah, and
yeah.
if he fell apart, if dad fell apart, who was left?
Exactly.
The
Who's
guilt
going
that
to be
he
left?
felt about Hannah,
Oh,
like, and then even in the moment, there was a moment where his mom is just like hysterical about Hannah. And she's like, my baby's gone, Hannah's gone. And he said, well, I'm still here and I need you too. And it's like, you have to remember, like, he's just a
I know
kid.
there were
they're
several
just
times
kids.
through the
And
whole book that
they're
I had to
taking care of the parents. Like,
I
Yeah.
had to stop and think several times that, wait a minute, these are not young adults. These are, they're
11, 12.
11,
Yeah.
12 year olds, 13.
I
I mean,
mean,
Barely. What I
yeah.
thought was that they were barely able to really comprehend, the danger that they were in. Like, I didn't think Ruthie may have known it because it said that she played, she swam on the boat and she would play with the other girls. But like, Yosef was just old enough to know that the dad is not the way he used to be. And, something else is afoot, something else is happening. And yeah, they are so, so young.
yeah, he was 12 and 13 in the book. I had to look and double check to make sure he wasn't 15 because I don't know why that number popped into my head. So I had to just look that up to just,
Yeah.
yeah, you would forget that they were so young just because
Yeah,
of
just
the insight that they had to have, and they had in the responsibility that they had to just jump in and make the decision to just have. and
Yeah.
take hold of, and just to do.
Just do it
Yeah.
without a lot of thinking and without a lot of, well, it could be, they didn't hem all around. They really jumped in when they needed to. And
Well, and
Right.
all of them did that. Joseph did that with taking care of his family. Isabel did that to save Senor Castillo, and just
yeah,
Yeah.
she made so many comments on the trip that were just very, and to kick the motor off the boat so that they wouldn't
Yeah,
sink.
that was so smart.
Oh,
And then, and they didn't understand why she was doing it at first. And I'm so glad she didn't stop.
And Amara,
yes,
her Luis's girlfriend, is the one that was like, "Wait, you've got no. This is right. This is right," because
Yeah.
she seemed to have had a really good head on her shoulders.
yes, they
Um,
did.
just to backtrack a little bit, something that I thought was really sad. When Yosef's dad did not go to his bar mitzvah, and it's page 75. It says he felt like someone had yanked his heart from his chest, and all the times he dreamed of this day, his father had always been there to recite a blessing with him. But maybe this is what becoming a man is, he thought. I'm sorry. I hate that he was there and didn't go, but it's like I understand.
Yeah,
His dad was battling so much internally, but I mean, that's one of those things that Yosef internalized. He's like, okay, maybe this is what it means to become a man, to become an adult. Like, sometimes the people you love the most are not going to show up for you. Show up for yourself.
I felt
right.
like a lot of that was to just reminding us too that their childhood was robbed from them from an early,
Mm-hmm.
like in
Very
the
much
other book
so.
in Long Way
Yes.
Down, their childhood was just stripped from them. And
Yeah.
it was almost like he became a man long before this ever happened. And he
Yeah,
had a bar
long
mitzvah
before
just
he
because out
was
of circumstance and fate and just what was happening in with war and terrorism and political instabilities had just stripped all of that away from them.
every bit of it. Yes.
And
I
he and
remember one
Muhammad,
part in the,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I remember one part in the book when they're in the Mediterranean, which is so funny because when I think of the Mediterranean, it's like beautiful crystal sea, and
Beautiful,
he calls it this
gorgeous.
dark, rough,
Oh,
probably is way out, in it where they were. But he was like, they finally reached land, and he was like, no, this is not land. This is a bunch of life jackets pulled together.
yeah,
That was a really hard part for
Oh,
me to read.
uh-huh. And
Stumbling around, not thinking that you're on ground, and like, wait a minute, this isn't ground. This is just piles and piles of life jackets, what we've just been through. Like, again, they just that they caught a break, but it was just such a hard fight.
and that his was really hard to read because it just made me think back to this all has happened as
Well,
in our adult
now,
lives. And
yes, yes,
I remember watching the news and all of the talk and discussions and debates over what to do with the Syrian refugees, and just
yes,
yeah,
to see this perspective of that compared to what was on the media. um
yeah,
it was just overwhelming to think that what what little bit they showed us, and to relate that to all the things that the text talks about, that a lot of times it censors things down to a point that we don't really understand and know what actually happened, and we
yeah,
don't understand the volume until a much later time
yes,
when somebody writes it from other perspectives, to see how inaccurate what we were told,
yes.
or the little pieces, how it just does not convey what actually happened, which is what typically happens is our in our history books. And I just felt
hmm,
like it made me think so much about how our historical fictions and things like this, even though they are fictitious story, they're based in reality, and they're based off of characters, as this book shows us.
Exactly.
And how important that is to really talk about our world. And then it just made me think so much more about how much of our world I really don't have a clue about, or
right.
most of us don't have a clue about.
Yeah,
I
we're
told
kind
y'all
of
I'm an
protected
overthinker.
here. Yeah,
No, seriously. I mean, it's important to make those connections. And then, too, related to the text, I think that's one aspect that they were trying to really get across, like how important it is to see and hear those other perspectives.
Yep.
yes,
And even when you think you have looked at all the different things and you've kind of combined them to see the different perspectives, it's like there's just this, and it's not that I'm not read or have not been well read or anything like that. It's just that this realization of, oh,
Yeah.
but there's not been enough of pulling. I don't feel like I've pulled enough of it together in so many different areas, and it just, I don't know. And yes,
That's what I said. I was
my
like,
overthinking really can be a problem.
no, I just said my knowledge of it was like
Uh
this.
huh.
I had a little bit here and a little bit there, and I knew it was bad. I remember watching the news a lot at that time, seeing the tent city, seeing them on rafts and stuff. But then something else happened, and I got caught up in it and not thinking this still goes on for a lot of people. This,
Oh,
though it was a brief moment in my time, it was months and years in their
Right.
time. It didn't go away just because it wasn't on my news anymore.
exactly.
And that just brings me, and I know I've already mentioned it, but the 750 migrants who are going across the Mediterranean. I mean, I just keep going back to there because just the irony of that happening right now while we're reading this. Um, I just looked up something and it's talking about because I guess it happened on June 14th. It says the testimonies of those who were on board paint a picture of chaos and desperation. They also call into question the Greek Coast Guard's version of events, suggesting more lives could have been saved and maybe even point to fault on the Greek authorities. And I'm just like, once
Oh
again, those
wow.
multiple perspectives. Like the people on the boat are like, no, the Coast Guards,
Could
they
have
did
helped.
more harm than help.
Yeah.
And out of 750 people, only 104 people have been rescued alive. When this article was written, and I think this was written June 23rd. But I'm just like,
And that's current.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. That's just what, 2, 3 weeks ago.
So yeah,
mhm,
so the span of this book where these characters where our protagonists are all connected through, I mean, across this huge span
the
of
sea.
time.
Mhm.
But then
Yes.
even the continuous cycle, like kind of long way down was all about this continuous cycle, and where do
Cycle.
you
Yeah,
break the cycle? And oh,
it's like I feel like we could go on and on and on, honestly, about the text. Like,
oh, we could.
Yeah, I know this one was good. This may have been my favorite one, but it was hard to read. Good Lord.
yeah.
It did take the longest, but I don't know. It just had a very big impact.
I just thought about another thing. This one, like, I keep thinking of little things.
Hmm.
Um, when Joseph and his mom and sister were on the train, and I wrote down a few different things, but just to summarize, basically, he talked about the fact that I think he said he's real Jews or real Germans. He said real Germans, and he talked about the fact that how they all look the same and they
Hmm.
wouldn't know if he was Jewish if they didn't see, the big J and his wristband and things like that.
Are you talking about when he was thinking through the where his teacher had pulled him up and like degraded him in front of
Oh,
the class, and he was thinking
yes.
That
through that,
too,
going, but no, would they really know? Is that really
right.
true?
Um,
'Cause-
that too, but when he decided to go get the newspaper and get the piece of
Yes.
candy for his
Yeah, he
sister.
goes through the different cars.
But speaking of that, Klaus, his best friend, turning on him and jumping him with the rest of the bullies. And I mean, when he went to go get the candy in the newspaper, when his wristband fell out of his pocket, that was one of those like, like,
Yes.
ah, my heart dropped. I'm so scared.
And
But
it
then
was
the
kind of
boy,
interesting that it was a boy about his age that turned him
yeah,
in. Because the adults,
It
I
didn't
guess,
turn him in.
yeah, that didn't turn him in,
Yeah,
and
that
especially after he had just lived through his best friend turning on him. What I
yeah.
don't know what they call the Hitler boys.
I
They
feel like there
call
were
them
so many planted little pieces in all of their stories of that were hope that even though these people are involved and it's like a society thing, or which that hold on, this is a lot of, I'm going to take several different directions here. So even though it's the society's way of doing things, then that they truly don't believe it, or they don't support the being so cruel to the other members of humanity. But in our text, also when it talks about the teachers and the study that they did of the classroom,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
somebody mentioned they talked about justice, and it was um the agreed upon rules a society makes and is subjective, and that not everyone in the society may agree to the rules, but they all have to follow them
For
for
the
the
greater good.
considered larger good of the group. And
Yeah.
then, it said larger good of the group, but that would be the considered. So the justice for like the Germans was to get rid of all the Jews, or
Exactly.
not Germans, the Nazis. And it was one of those things that I feel like there were planted little glimpses of people that didn't think that was the right way, which follows suit with all of the discussions in our text that talk about that it's defined in so many ways. How do you
Mhm.
truly define freedom? How do you truly define justice and war and terrorism? They have a definition, but also they can mean so many different things to so many different people.
Yes.
So that brings me in the mindset, and this is something that I say so often. Perception is reality.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like how I perceive something may be completely different from how you may perceive something, but for both of us, how we perceive it is our
Is
our
our
reality.
reality.
Mhm.
Yes.
So, and I think like to tie in the text, um, or the chapter, that was like a big aspect, like with them trying to define freedom, justice, and war and terrorism, perception is reality.
Yes,
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting when they were talking about, though they're very different for different reasons, war and terrorism are
Are the
really
same.
the same thing.
they really are.
Yeah.
But I feel like
Um,
these mentor texts, there's really they've taken our textbook and they've
yeah,
hit on the topics in a different in a way that it's all just comes together into this just
they did
evolving,
a
changing, life changing, or or perspective
yeah,
changing um thought process. I
they
don't
did such a great job like matching the mentor text with
Mhm.
the chapters.
With the chapters. Yes. Cause it's
Like,
right. It
I mean,
goes right
spot
hand
on.
in hand.
I'm like,
Yeah.
wow. And you could just tell like it's all so well thought out, the connections. Um, what the way the chapter started off with a really strong quote. It says, I know that you're smart and I know that you think you're doing what is best for me. But if freedom is handled just your way, then it's not my freedom or free. And that was a refrain from the Big Box, Toni Morrison, and Slay Morrison. And I'm like, I feel like that kind of encompasses perfectly what we're just saying. Like,
Mhm.
just because it's your version doesn't mean that's how it is for me.
Mhm.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's the problem. Like, even there was a part in the text where they kind of called out the US and Western territories like stepping in to help people, but sometimes helping is not always help, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Sometimes
And sometimes our help or our version of help is not their version of help.
Yeah,
exactly.
and it's like we do more harm than help a lot of the time, and that kind of
Yeah.
ties back to in that article when they just said the Greek Coast Guard, their version of help
Help
did
was,
more
yeah,
harm
was hard.
according
And
to people who were on the ship. Like,
yeah.
um,
And
ugh,
that also made me think about too, when you're talking about our versions of help, and people want to be the helper and they want to be the doer, and they want to just give you all these things because they think that that's what helps you. And in reality, it just makes you feel so disconnected, because the reality is do they really know anything? And this is kind of very random, but I mean it ties about either you or our society or a culture. There have been so many things in the past where you read, or that I've read about, like for example, people that just want to help, and so they'll do a clothing drive or a shoe drive or
mhm,
whatever to send to all these places that they feel like need their help. But when you see the reality of what that is, all it's done is created these large landfills and beaches filled with clothes that are not
Hey.
even
Exactly. They're not
usable
even
for the
used. Yeah.
place that they've sent them, because there's just no thought in it. And there's
Yeah.
just oh, but I'm helping
E-
someone.
And
And
I
it's your
think,
Exactly.
version of what
Oh,
you
but we're
consider to
helping.
be
Yes.
helpful, but it's not helpful at all.
Yeah.
Um, and then I've read
which,
some articles too about where like Operation Christmas Child, with the shoe boxes and things like that. That at one
mhm,
point in time they didn't have so many restrictions in that telling you what you should put in there. But a lot of times you're sending toothbrushes to places that, even though dental health is important, have no concept of what that is, what it means to use one. And I
even
understand that you're
water.
trying to teach them, but you also need people there or the water to be able to do so. Or they'll send them toys and Play-Doh when they really just need something to eat.
Yeah. Instead of toys, that they
A
need
ball,
food. Yeah.
something, not Play-Doh and Barbie shoes and all these things that they don't understand. They don't
What
need
to even
doll
do
clothes
with.
because they don't know what to do with that. And that is, it creates this situation where they don't know
Mm.
anything, and then they feel helpless, and more helpless because they don't understand it.
I think you said a lot when you said because they don't think. It's the lack of
Yes.
thought.
It's the
Like,
lack of thought. It's the, oh, we're gonna do good. We're gonna do great. Look at how we can organize and get this stuff done. And maybe just another 5 or 10 thoughts on that would think,
yeah.
do they
It's
really
like
need that over food and over, band-aids or medicine or something?
when you're
Right.
talking about, what we think is helping, and I mentioned that about the clothes. It's like having a coat drive
Mhm.
for an island that lives in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't
near the
even get above.
equator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's people, but things like that happen around us, and that's where, when you're talking about that, it making the comments about the U.S., that a lot of times we think, or the people of this nation and of various places think that we should help and do more, but what you consider to be help is really not.
It's not help. Right. Right.
The intention is there. The intentions
Right.
are pure, but sometimes, like we said, I mean, that help is not always.
Sometimes intentions, like we just said a while ago, and you pointed out about the thought, intentions need to be have more thought.
Yeah.
So this just made me think, and okay, stay with me because it
Uh-huh.
does seem kind of random, but I feel like it applies because it's for children. Okay, you guys know the movie The Incredibles?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it just made me think about The Incredibles when you were speaking because in the first movie and part of the second movie, people are sick of heroes. They're sick of the heroes. And they've made a lot of shows and movies, even more in the more recent years too, because they're sick of heroes. Heroes go in trying to save everybody, but in doing so, there's so much damage and destruction.
Mhm.
Like, and that's why, and like Batman and people don't like vigilantes because in trying to help, or Spider-Man, Batman, Spider, all these heroes in trying to help, there's always so much destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that really ties to this book, because you have three protagonists here in this book that they're incidental. um I mean, consider you could consider them heroes for what they've gone through and what they had to just, when we mentioned that they had to just make decisions, and they're 10, 11, 12 years old, and jump into something and just act and be
Right.
responsible for things. But you've got that they weren't the vigilantes or anything like that, but there are our characters. They were incidentally became heroes, so to speak.
Especially
Yes.
when Muhammad, I mean, we can say this for all three of the characters because for Isabel when she jumped out the boat, um, but I when you said that it made me think about when Muhammad finally, and I wrote a lot of quotes about that too, but when he finally learned that sometimes it's better to be seen and heard,
Then be
and like that was his
invisible.
big turning point. Like
Yep,
when
and
they,
and then he walked out when the
yes,
United
when he
Nations
walked
UN was
out,
there, and what were they supposed to do? The United
that
Nations
was
was there
so hard.
because they were not doing what they were supposed to, and their mistreatment of people. And so, I mean, what were they going to do? Shoot them?
Right.
Right. Right.
I was so happy when he finally was like, you know what? No, actually, it is better to be seen. This is, and it's almost like he thought a lot about it. He put a lot of thought into it, but not really. Like
Yeah.
it was like that's something that he had to just do. It was quick
Just
thoughts,
do.
and he's like, we just have to do. And I love that everybody followed. Like,
Yes.
especially when his brother, that was the first reaction we got out of his brother the whole book. He's like, Muhammad, what are you doing? It's like, I'm not staying here. So let's go.
Yeah.
Oof.
And then the support that followed, that was what got them through
Yeah.
and got them on their way. And so then I started thinking too, since that was so recent, I wonder who, which I know it said in the back, it mentioned that a couple of the places have since built fences, but I wonder
Yeah.
how the treatment and the welcoming of the refugees has changed as far as
Yeah.
all of that in various places.
I would love to think that it's changed a lot, but I don't know. The pessimist in me says it probably isn't that much different. Like I'm sure there are still people who have
Even here in
difficulty.
America. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
Yeah.
think
mean,
about how
just look
often
here.
illegal aliens, people, they don't want illegal aliens here. And it's like, are you
Well,
people serious? Think,
yes, 'cause
how did
that's
you
still
get
going
here?
on
That's
now
what
with
I
the
said.
Mexican
Yeah.
border.
How
Yeah,
do
that's
you
what
think
I
if
said.
you
How
got
did you
here, your
get
people
here?
out here?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
mean, the delusion, but whatever.
But yeah,
Um,
no, I did think a lot about that just with our own country. I mean,
and it's so prevalent. I know they
it
mentioned Donald
is.
Trump. Oh, and I have the book. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find it that quickly, but they mentioned
Oh, the with the signing of the refugees.
yeah, and how since I think they whatever it was signed into place in 1980, and there's been like no violent acts from them. But he's like, oh, we've got to stop this violence, so we're not accepting any more refugees. I think from Syria. I don't know. I have to look to find the exact thing, but y'all know what I'm talking about? Maybe. Um,
On January 27th, 2017, he signed an executive order indefinitely suspending the entry of all Syrian refugees into the
yeah.
U.S. The executive order was titled Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States, despite a report by the Cato Institute that says that no person accepted to the U.S. as a refugee, Syrian or otherwise, has been implicated in a major fatal terrorist attack since the Refugee Act of 1980 established the current system for accepting refugees into the U.S.
And that right there, that is America.
Yeah, and that
Well,
right
Like,
there.
it talks about in our text also about how terrorism has created such a stereotype and so much
yeah.
radical racial prejudice in a way that in just unprecedented volumes. It's just because all of a sudden, you have all of these um religious organizations or people just because of their, these additional people that people are afraid of. Like the
Being
people were
afraid of.
afraid of the Japanese for so long after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Heck, if
Mhm.
you really get into that research and learn about the concentration camps they had, after that, it was horrible.
Oh, it was terrible. Yeah, the internment camps. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh.
And I was so little, so like reading this is very like, oh wow, I'm like learning. Um, but I also like that they mentioned oh, where is it? The Hiroshima no Pika book, which
Mhm.
was about the retaliation when we bombed over there and
Yes.
just their perspective. And it's like, and then speaking of the racial prejudice, um, in the country, like towards Muslims and anyone appearing Muslim after 9/11. Um, Japanese Americans, the prejudice that Japanese Americans faced after the Pearl Harbor bombing. And for me, it was the irony that they mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing again, because
Mhm.
it says a white American citizen bombed and killed 168 people. And realistically, most of the time that these mass school shootings and bombings occur, it comes from white Americans,
Yes.
and
White
those are
American males.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
And y'all, I remember after 9/11, people were like, Muslims are everywhere. Anybody that's brown must be a Muslim. Anybody that wears any kind of head scarf or a head wrap must be a Muslim. And I'm like, they're Indian.
right.
They're not even. They have no. They're Israeli. They're not even. But it was such a time of point and run and duck and don't even ask. Just assume that everybody. It was just a time of panic.
Yeah.
That's what I felt a lot in this book. Just a time of panic. Like we've got to get these Jews out of here. We got to get
And
you
it's
know
like the fear. Everyone
the
is so fueled
fear.
by
So
fear.
fearful.
And a lot of the time, the fear is not even justified,
Mhm.
It's
but
an
it
it's an
also,
unfounded fear.
that made me think about something from the book. They said something about when they got to America, like, would there be school shootings? Because they heard a lot about school shootings, and it
Yes.
was sad. But it's
Yeah.
like, and it's gotten even worse. Like,
When Isabel talks about what their teacher would tell them about
yeah,
America, that it was, I mean, it was so about how many people were killed in gun violence, and
and I've heard
um
people like a friend of mine. I think she was in Spain a few weeks ago, and somebody said to her, I think they asked her where she was from, and she said Georgia, like Atlanta, Georgia. And they said, like, "Oh, the place with all the shootings," and they associate the United States, like, as a whole, like, all these shootings, and I'm just like,
Yes.
I hate that, like,
I
that's
do
such
too. I absolutely hate it, but it's
I mean,
true.
it is reality,
Yeah,
though.
it is. That's our current reality, unfortunately.
Oh, it's been like, I mean, none of it is justified from high schools, but, like, when they go shoot up elementary schools, I'm
Yes.
like, "What?"
yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's unbelievable that it's been so many that I have kind of started to lose like, oh wait, that was there. That was there.
Yeah. I can't even remember, like, "Oh, wait, this just happened a few weeks ago, a few
Yeah,
months
exactly.
ago."
Like I have to go back and think, okay, no, wait, when was that? It was a nightclub here and a school shooting there and a synagogue there. And it was like, oh my gracious.
And then, with social media, something bringing back to perspectives, last night I was on TikTok and I saw a mom, she was posting pictures and videos of her daughter, and she got killed in one of the elementary school shootings. And she was just saying, like, oh, how much she wished she missed her daughter and things like that. I'm just like, the perspective of the people. For us, it's just like one of these school shootings, but for them, it's like they're still living with this every day. She
Yeah,
does not have her daughter.
I feel like what y'all
exactly.
are talking about ties so much into the part of the chapter in our text that talks about using children's books to address war, terrorism, justice, and freedom, which is all what all of these things have been about too. I mean, to tie it all together. But when it talks about the study and it says that it appreciated one of the most important things that the teachers showed in their responses to the survey was honesty and not knowing how to comprehend the terms, and
Yeah,
their honesty to be able to say, I don't know um how to handle this, how to absorb this, how to and the dirt they're not knowing their will and their willingness to go on this journey of mediating these tough and rather abstract notions with students. And just it's how all about how we don't know how to absorb it and process it and handle it ourselves as
ourselves.
adults.
Exactly.
So
They
think
Exactly. So
about
have
how
these
in the
young
world are they
children. If
going
we didn't have
to?
stories to go through based off their age and their maturity level and their grade level, I mean, it is so much. I mean,
It
how do you
yeah,
is.
open that discussion? Like kind of like it has talked about when it was talking about with George and with the last one with Long Way Down, that was related to violence. It is so heavy and it's so much to just digest and to interpret that opening the discourse and the discussion around that is, you don't just walk in and, hey, let's talk about this. so-and-so got shot. And
Right,
it,
right, you're right.
yeah, or, or so-and-so school. It's not something that you can easily bring up. But the kids don't feel like they have a place to be able to discuss their fears and
Right.
talk about these things. And I just feel like it's all kind of tied
Time.
together so
And I
much.
know,
And I've noticed too, like in my classes the past couple of years, that sometimes the kids don't have a reaction because they are absorbing it. Doesn't mean they don't
mhm.
care. It
Right.
just means
Oh,
that when they hear about 6 million Jews dying, or when they, think about someone being unjustly, murdered, it takes a minute to kind of fathom that and really understand that it was not that long ago, or it didn't happen. It was not over there and not
it
here.
still
Like it
happened.
does, yeah, it's still happening, and it takes a minute for them. And once they do, they are able to comprehend it. But that's, probably the first time they've ever heard like that number of people dying, or
Yeah.
that number, of people not being able to
And it
survive.
mentions that in the text. It talks
Yeah.
about that
Yes.
you have to show them that it's real to help and impress upon them that even though this is a fictional story, this really happened, because they don't have a context. It says that what is it? They said many of our students may not have a context in which to place these situations. It's
Yeah.
like they can't fathom, and they can't wrap their brain around the possibility of this happening,
That
because they're
something
so
like that
far
could happen.
removed from
Yes.
where and when that was. But it's so important that we know these sides of things, and we know and maintain keep up with history, because isn't that what it in one of the books that it talk about, or in the chapter, that you have to stay knowledgeable of history, because the whole point of teaching history is, or part of it is, to hopefully for it not to happen again,
Mhm.
Yes,
not to
exactly.
repeat itself.
And that's what,
Um,
like, whatever we read during the year, or whatever we talk about, I try to connect it to something that is currently going on.
yeah.
Because everything, just because it's written down in a book, doesn't mean it happened, thousands of years ago, or you're so disconnected that you can't find a connection
Well, I mean, look at
to
Joseph
it.
his journey began in 1939. Muhammad's was in 2015. They're so far apart, but yet so
They
close.
are
Mhm.
so much of these exact
In the
same.
last two chapters of the Mentor and Refugee, did you notice the titles of the chapter?
Oh, no, I
The
didn't.
titles of the chapter mention home,
Oh yeah.
Isabel, the last
Yeah.
chapter, and then Muhammad's last chapter, it also says home as
Yeah.
well.
I
Oh,
think when I did notice that, it was just more of like a, I mean, we were on pins and needles the whole book, and the whole time you're wondering, are they gonna get to their destination? Are they gonna get their whatever version of happy they can get after everything that they've been through? Are they gonna get some type of happy ending? So when I did read it was just like,
yeah, I was just glad that.
yeah,
Well, I've read something that was talking about this, because y'all know I've told you that I have to Google stuff because I
yeah,
just am curious about other things, and it was talking about that um the important part about it being home, and one of the things to, as far as teaching this book to kids, was talking about about the chapter titles changing to home, that even though they're going to be in a new country, that home is not where you were born. Home
mhm,
is where
It's
you
where you're
live
at.
and where you
Yeah.
start your new life, or start a new life. And so for them, home is where they're going to start a new life. They will have that is home for them, but that home is not necessarily where you're born, where you were born,
Yes.
where you
Wasn't it
are.
Isabel that said when she heard the music, it was a new sound for her?
oh
And that
yeah.
was the new.
And when she finally, yeah, because we didn't even talk about that. I'm
when
like,
she
there's so
finally
much.
when she finally got the clave, and she got the
Yes,
beat, and she made the song,
and I
I
Yeah.
cried a little bit too
boohooed like a
because
baby.
yes, even the fact that she chose the song kind of like for Ivan, I'm just like, oh my gosh.
She
I
chose the
know.
Star Spangled Banner, but to the music that tied it to her Cuban heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote, hold on, I know it's towards the end. I know she said like Lito was wrong. Okay, Lito was wrong. She didn't have to be in Havana to hear it, to feel it. She had brought Cuba with her to Miami.
Yeah, that was it. Okay.
And
It's always in your heart.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
always in your heart.
and it showed how important it was for her. And she said it like, how important it was to keep her heritage with her, and how her brother wasn't there. Her brother wasn't in Havana running throughout the streets and whatnot. But how important it was for them that he be born here in Miami. It also made me think, in Miami, there's like a little, I don't know what it's called. It's like a little Cuba, like it's a whole area.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's right. I've never been, but I have heard people mention it. Like we went to Little Havana. I think
Yeah,
it's Little
Yeah.
Havana they call it.
yeah. And I've been, I was with my grandparents and we randomly just went through there one night. And so this brought me back to there. I'm like, like, okay, I didn't even realize how deep the connection was between Miami and Cuba. And I'm like, okay, that's why that was there. And it's so important that it's there.
Yes.
So just that connection. And just to backtrack a little bit, um, in the Using Children's Book to Address War, Terrorism, Justice, and Freedom, show that it's real. The importance of conducting those discussions before and after reading in an open and honest way. And then I also wrote under the reading authentic accounts. Teach violence and war while also teaching tolerance and sensitivity, and how these books will generate a lot of questions that do not have easy answers. And sometimes, like, as their
Yes.
teachers, we may not know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
But
okay too. And we can
yeah,
always say we don't have the answer. Kids
and
love
that's
when they know we don't have the answer.
But it
right.
just shows them that there's so many different. I mean,
Levels
you
and
just, I mean,
parts.
the survey part was 22 teachers and nobody had the same answer or the same definition.
Yeah.
Something that was interesting to me about that I wrote, most people have some type of connection to war and terrorism. When they surveyed those people, a lot of them
Yeah, they
had
were like
somebody fighting in
seven
the
out of
war.
10 knew somebody or
Yeah.
either were directly affected or knew somebody that was affected
Mm-hmm.
Or even some of the people had said they were refugees at one point
at one
themselves.
point. Yeah.
And then when they talked about the term just war, it's a contradiction because innocent people are going to be killed on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
either way.
Exactly. Either way.
And then that brings me back to like terrorism that, even here, I like that they called out like the Ku Klux Klan as an act of terrorism, towards African American people, because I feel like you don't hear many people call that terrorism, but like
It
that's
is
what it is.
definitely terrorism.
But
But yeah,
terrorism is an act of violence against a specific targeted group of people, and that was acts of violence against a specific targeted group of
yes.
people.
Yes.
I think it just shows like America likes to act like, our hands are so clean, but
That's
not
they're definitely
only do
not.
we go to other countries and go mess up, and again, the intentions, to help people,
Yes.
but a lot of the time, like, I mean, innocent people are going to be killed. And to me, the irony of America always going to help out in other countries, like, we don't help our own people here.
Right. Like we were talking about, like Lauren, you had said in Flint. I mean, that's
Mhm.
a crisis. That's not a misstep. People
And
still are having trouble with drinking clean water
yeah,
in a in a in a in a state that is, part of our United States. It's not
even here, like the homeless issue. I mean, we have
The mental health issue
the
that
mental health
thrives
issue.
in the
I mean, it's like we could go
homeless
on and on.
situation.
There's so
Yes.
much that takes place here. And even what this oh my gosh, see. Okay, I'm thinking about the student loans. And not even just that, what just got overturned?
oh yeah, just yesterday, wasn't it?
Yes.
They said that it's not constitutional to forgive student loans.
And that happened. They said that you can discriminate against people. I mean, they're legalizing so many things that are, I mean, somebody said, see, I'm like at a loss of words because it's so much, but
So much has happened over the
That's what
last
I feel like
just few
I have
days.
been for the past 2 weeks. I feel like we have had so much to digest, and not that it's bad or good. It's just that it's emotionally heavy, and it just makes you think so deeply about things. That I feel like everything has been. I've been speechless just because it's been a lot that I feel like has been life changing as far as reflecting
Yes.
on who you are on the inside. And anyway.
we
You
all,
know, I've needed a lot of reflection time lately
yeah.
here.
I think what a lot that has been happening is like there's all these things that are written in the Constitution, and we all have these constitutional rights, and people have fought and given their lives for these things, and now in 2023 they're just tossing them out, overturning them, and it's like, huh?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where it talks about too in our text, in our textbook, about that, you know, the definition isn't clear. And how we talked about, Lorna, you talked earlier about people's perspectives. So
Mhm.
like for example, I always tell my kids in ELA, okay, we can all write a sentence about a black cat in a tree, and everybody's perspective and viewpoint and sentence, every sentence is going to be different, but it's going to kind of be about the same thing. It's going to be about a cat in a tree.
Yeah.
But everybody's gonna have a different view of how to say that, how to do that, and how to go about that. Because we all have such a different perspective. And sometimes that can get really messed up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it all just
Yeah.
gets so messy.
Yeah.
Well, but think about too how that's how played into our history books and censorship, and how it has taken things down to just small little tidbits where it's not even portraying accurately portraying anything.
Exactly. It gets
Right.
broken down and watered down and washed
And that
away. And it's like, oh,
happens to
wait a
our
minute.
laws too.
Yes.
Yes. I wrote, they said ultimately, depending on which side of the border a person is on, one becomes a terrorist or one becomes a brave warrior.
Oh,
These are described
yes.
as alternate realities, and by creating an alternate reality, we can possibly facilitate empathy and understanding. But just thinking about, depending on where you are, just shows, or like if you're the villain or the bad guy. I mean, the
Mhm.
villain, obviously the
Or the
villain is,
hero.
yes, the villain or the hero,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's-
And these people, like, I don't know, I guess they think they're doing the right thing, but it's like,
Well, even your terrorists, I mean, we all, it's mentioned in the text that they're considered to be madmen in most definitions, or
mhm,
acts called by madness or things like that. But they truly think that they are fighting a war
yeah,
for what they believe
for
in.
what, yeah, for what they believe in. I mean, when I thought about it, the mutiny that they were planning on the ship and they wanted Yosef to be a part of, that
yeah,
was an act of terrorism,
Uh-huh.
technically, I guess.
yeah.
I would have, probably wanted to join in on it too to figure out what was going on. But I guess
Well,
if you just go by definition, then yeah, they went against a group and they rose up against,
it,
the
it's
captain of the ship.
and it can also be considered by our textbook definition, our text, in the way it's talking about an act of war on
An
a
act of
smaller
On
scale.
a smaller
Mhm.
scale, yes. Yeah. So that's why we were talking about perspective. You have to look at, what was going on and what was their reasoning for doing something like that, because they wanted to find out what was happening, what they were about to be, made forced to do.
Which is
That,
why we have to have all of these books from different perspectives so that we can
yeah,
combine the different perspectives to see the truth in the
In in
perspectives.
it,
Does that make
exactly.
sense? Does that make
Yes.
sense?
No, it does. Especially when you said the part about all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Getting all of them, getting so that your perspective can be of one of knowledge and background.
Well, think about in our book talks how many we're bringing three separate perspectives to the table for this
Right.
1 hour discussion. And each week we all have so many things that stood out in different ways. Even though we are all open minded and we're very much taken aback and impressed and deep think about each other's perspectives, but we all are bringing three very different perspectives to the
Yeah.
table here.
Yeah,
And
we
I
that's
are.
think that's
this.
that's so funny that you said that because I never really thought about that before. How like I mean, of course, we're three different people. We're giving three different perspectives, but even like our backgrounds, like Brian is a white male, I'm an African American girl, like, it's and then we have a white female perspective as well. It's just so many different perspectives.
So
It's
much, so
interesting when
much
you really think
difference.
about it, especially because like it's not like our professor knew.
No, I
That's
don't think she knew. If she
right,
did, she's got a real good, I don't
right.
know,
She did a good
background. She's got a
job.
lot more than I thought she did.
But I mean, it is cool that we get to have these discussions from people with different backgrounds, different perspectives, and how and it's interesting too how a lot of we agree on a lot of the things. Like we come to the same conclusion too.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even with our different backgrounds, we do have a lot of commonality in the things that we've discussed,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of consensus, which is great. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, y'all, I think mine may have just stopped recording. Did y'all's? Oh, no, it didn't. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't see the little
Blinking.
dot anymore.
And mine is still recording,
Okay,
hopefully.
good. We're
It
all
says
still
it
there.
is.
Good.
But the way the way these computers have been doing us.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh.
I guess okay to end it all or to like come to some sense of conclusion. Because I know we literally could go on and on from the
Oh,
textbook and the chapter because like es- especially how relevant it all is. Um, for the reasons for war, I wrote power, control, domination over religion, government, hatred,
Yes.
oppression, cultural ignorance, mistrust. And most people have some connection to these aspects. So
That was one of the things that I wrote down too. I was like, just power, fear,
yeah.
control.
yep.
The book gave a lot of really good examples of text to read in class. I remember
Mhm.
reading Pink and Say as a child. Um, it was about two boys during the Civil War. One was black, one was white, and like their connection. I know somebody died. I remember I was sad. Anne Frank,
And Frank, yeah.
like it's like a rite of passage reading that book.
I think so too.
Um, and then kind of like they said, like reading these books there's gonna be so many big questions. And because even we as adults, like I feel like we have so many big questions. I don't understand a lot that's going on in the world. So
Exactly. I
I
don't
mean I
either.
can't even imagine the questions like the students would have.
And it stood out
Right.
But
to me when it talked about that, and it mentioned that the authors who write these tales must have the hardest job in trying
yeah,
to balance the horrors without putting off their readers while at the same time conveying the
honest,
actual catastrophic events and the
Yeah,
consequences
exactly.
that
How
came
bad it
about.
was without showing how bad it really was.
Right.
Yes.
But then not watering it down and making it and censoring it so much that it doesn't
yeah,
truly tell you what happened.
yeah,
I'm sorry, we're kind of crazy at my house.
you're
My
fine.
husband travels for like a month at a time and he came in this past week, so everybody's just everywhere.
Oh, he's back home. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
Right. But yeah, just being able to like be honest with your students and make those connections while also teaching about the violence, but still teaching them about tolerance and sensitivity. And, a lot of the time, because we see so much of this stuff every day, and I've said this before, like we've become desensitized to it. Like you
Yeah.
don't want to feel it.
Right.
But actually, I mean, reading a book, like it puts you in the headspace, like, no, you're gonna feel this because it's right there, especially when you really get into the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and some of what we're talking about with history and just so many things, it just these books, so many of our books let us see how our chapter on censorship, and you don't realize how censored life is until you start really reading all the different perspectives,
Yes. And
and
how
then it
you
then it just, I don't know, it just makes me think about all the past chapters, actually, you know,
Right.
and how
Yeah.
they all can tie into all of them and to pull together.
And I feel like it would be difficult to teach about this because it's like because it can be so graphic and so,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just traumatic.
Right.
There's so
We were
much
talking about the
death and
violence last
bloodshed
week.
and yeah. So it's
Just you,
like,
you don't want to make it worse, but yet,
yeah,
you
you
do it.
wanna
It's
convey
it's
the
sort of a
reality.
fine line and kind of, and like we were talking about, we may have a class one year that's right there with it, or we may have a group that maybe they need a little bit more. So I guess you could really have to gauge and know your students,
Yeah.
figure out, are they ready for this?
But
It's funny.
think about this too. So like last week we talked about Long Way Down being very heavy and this one being very heavy. But to the people who live it, it's not heavy.
It's not,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably
It's
this is their
it's
life
the
and their
reality that
I
they see,
think
and they see themselves represented, like it's talked about so many times with the literature, that they see themselves represented and they feel, I mean, not that you're
yeah,
normalizing it or anything, but this to help them
just that
come to terms with their
validation.
feelings and be able to talk
yes,
about it.
yeah,
Because
Because
I feel like even I feel like it's not that it's not heavy,
Mhm.
it's just more so because that's your reality, you become so desensitized to it because it's
Exactly.
like it sucks. I hate it, but it is the way it is. Like
Well,
that's
kind
just
of like
how it
exactly. It's
the
the way it
difference
is.
between Muhammad or Muhammad and his brother Walid.
yeah,
Walid was not phased. He just sat there blank, and Muhammad, he felt like something was wrong with him because he just didn't flinch and he wasn't phased. But then they grew up several years apart, and that started happening at a much younger, influential age of for
yeah.
Walid, and he
Yeah,
doesn't really remember the time that it happened before it happened.
And I don't
right,
know if I
right.
said this before, but Muhammad and Yosef, they like they were there before the war and before everything, and they both mentioned that quite a few times. Like,
Definitely. That
But
they
like
were,
Ruthie could have fun, Joseph's sister, she could have fun, but she didn't know a time before that existed. I mean, even though she was
yes.
still young, but so this was the norm for her,
Yeah,
just like
this
Waleed,
this
it was the
became her
norm.
way of life.
Mhm.
mm, I feel like it's probably, I mean, it's traumatic for everybody, but even for the people who knew how it was before, like it's just like that the fact that they know this is not how it's supposed to be. It just brings me to the quote, ignorance is bliss.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
and that's how it was for Ruthie. She got to live like at
She was
least she didn't
innocent. She
know.
didn't have to be an adult,
Yeah,
Yeah. So
but she was carrying the diamonds.
she
right.
was. I know.
Yeah. And
I,
how she kept saying, don't lose your coats, keep
Don't
your
lose your
coats on.
coats.
It
Don't
made
take
me
your
think
coats off. Don't take
I thought it was just because like she was being smart because eventually it's gonna get cold.
Mhm.
So they need to have their
yeah, I,
coats.
I didn't know that they had that aspect of it. That was
Yeah.
just pretty ingenious. Like just the things and the things that they do, and the probably just more even like that we don't even know. But
Yeah.
the survival, whatever you have to do.
Those survival instincts that those parents and I mean the kids had to have them too, but like the parents, because the way that she even thought, like, let me sew this into her
Yeah,
coat.
Lauren, are
And
you
the
putting
fact
on
that she
Burt's
chose
Bees?
Ruthie.
Are you putting on Burt's Bees?
Oh, I have that too, but she's some cocoa butter.
Because just a little while ago, I was like, man, I really wish I had my Burt's Bees right now. My mouth is really dry.
I
So it's
literally
like,
made sure to have my chapstick and a bottle of water right
oh,
beside
see,
me.
y'all come prepared. I don't. Everything I've got's on the other side of the room, and I'm sitting here looking at it like, man, I wish I could just get that Burt's Bees.
Mhm. Okay, well, does anybody else have anything else they want to add before we conclude?
No, I think I'm out.
Let's see. What is our chapter next time about? Oh wow. Sorry, we really went this time.
I
Oh,
knew we were.
prejudice and abuse. Wow.
And child, yeah, prejudice,
Oh, I'm
bullying,
so
and
sick of all
abuse.
this sadness.
I know.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that because I have felt like I'm so glad. Okay, so that I took this class this summer. I initially I thought I felt overwhelmed and I was intimidated by this book talk part or this
Me too.
conversation part, the group part. And I thought I need to drop this class. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I'm not gonna be
I
able to do
said
this.
that
I need
too.
to
I said,
drop it.
I've got to drop a class. I can't
Especially
do
I
this.
reading
can't do
so
this. But I'm
much.
so glad. But I was really intrigued by everything about the class and the books, and I wanted to get into it
Yeah.
really. And but I hindsight, I'm so glad that I did keep it because
Me
this
too. I
is
couldn't have
so
done this through the
heavy
year.
compared with what dealing with the heaviness that our students deal with every day. I'm glad I was able to do it this summer so that I could give it the attention and the justice that it needs.
Yeah.
Yes. I
I
don't
mean,
think I would have done it during the school year at all.
I
I
don't
put
feel like it
that,
would have had such an impact on me.
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. I put that in my midterm, like, um, just because the books deserve time, like to really be able to take them how they're meant to be read, I guess. And so I guess I'll say like by us taking this in the summer and having more time, I'm glad to have the time to actually, be able to take the books how they're supposed to be read.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And
I,
you
I would
mentioned,
not have given this much time to them during the school year. I just wouldn't have.
yeah, I
It's
mean, it's
because
like you wouldn't
there are
even
only so
have
many
the
hours
time.
in a day. We
Right. There's
Yeah.
only so many hours in a day.
and
Because
like
even with these weeks, it's so much to have to like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is
But
a
even
lot.
Dr. O said that when she sent us that message
yeah,
about when she was in her professional development, that your brain is just fried. It gets to a point where you just have to walk away for a
It's
minute because you
overloaded.
cannot
Yeah.
process any more of it.
Uh-uh.
Then I have to think about our kids too that go through all that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
So, Emily, do you want to do next week's or do you want me to?
I'm good either way. I'm happy to do it.
I
Um,
don't mind either. We can even take the weekend, and we don't have to decide right now. We can
okay,
take the rest of the weekend and just kind of see. I haven't looked at next week's book.
okay.
I've got it, but I haven't looked
Yeah,
at
I
it.
have
So
them. I haven't looked at them yet. Um,
okay.
I need to
And
take them one at a time.
I
hmm
know, right? I can't. I was telling Lauren I can't read ahead. I gotta do one. I'm only available for one at a
yeah.
time.
No, I definitely can't read the books ahead.
Yeah.
But
So
Lauren, can I get my chapter notes and refugee notes to you later on, maybe today or tomorrow?
of course, take your time. I put mine on there this morning, but like take your time. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
yeah, I've
All
been
right.
working on mine. And I have some in there and some that are not. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. So this time around, and I think it was so smart of me to do. I was gonna tell y'all, I mean, it just depends on how you are with technology, but normally, I haven't marked up my books, but normally I will just write down in my notes like the page number, and then I have to go back and find the quotes and then type up all the quotes. But this time around, like I took pictures of every page, not every page, of every page with the quote that I wanted to write down. And but both of y'all have iPhones. So,
Yeah.
now when you take pictures, on the pictures you can highlight the words.
I didn't know that.
So
I didn't either. So you can
it's
copy
new.
paste from them.
Yes, and that's what I did. I took
Oh,
pictures.
That is
thank
smart.
you for that. Oh my gosh.
So
Okay, I'm gonna try that this week.
Well, see, I
yeah,
remember technology when you couldn't even copy paste from a PDF.
yeah.
Oh
So
yeah. I
This is new on iPhones. Like, I mean, probably in the past, it's definitely this year new. I don't know how many months it's been, but I
okay, I'm
like
gonna try it, but if I need some help, I may be reaching out to y'all.
literally you can just and you're not gonna be able to see, but okay, like take a picture of the page and then copy and paste the text, like highlight what you want, and then you copy it. I pasted each of the quotes in my notes, and then I emailed it to myself, and boom, I didn't have to do all that work. But it did have some typos, so I do have to go back and like fix it.
yeah.
But I mean, for what it would have taken me a couple of hours, I did it in less than 30 minutes. And I
Oh,
had
okay.
over like 54 pictures of quotes. So,
That's awesome. Okay, so I just took a random or a picture of a random page and it is letting me copy.
yep. So, that's a
That's
really good
fantastic.
tip that I hope you guys can use because it was very helpful for me.
That is completely helpful. I love that. Oh my gosh. Yeah, usually I just keep a running Google Doc and while I'm reading it, I'm typing,
Uh-huh.
but I get distracted really easy doing that, and
Yeah.
it's just time consuming. Feels
Yeah,
like.
and it takes so long to like I can't sit there and in order for me to read it and really process everything, I can't keep stopping and like writing down the
Right,
quotes.
right.
So for me, it was just so quick and easy to like take the picture. And then when I go back and look at the page, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to write down. So,
Oh
and it,
yeah. Oh my gosh, that's gonna be a time saver.
yes.
Wow.
All right.
All right.
That
Enjoy your
concludes.
trip, Lauren.
Yes, have fun.
Thank you.
Get lots of
Um,
rest. Enjoy the scenery.
yeah, I'm excited. And I
Okay.
will talk to y'all next Friday.
Yeah, sounds
Yes.
great.
Sounds good. All right. Bye, Emily.
All right, bye.